Well, it's a real honor and privilege to be here today, and I want to thank the organizers for inviting me. I may only know very few of you, but I do consider you today all of my friends, because by participating in today's March of Remembrance, you are demonstrating your compassion for remembering the victims of the Holocaust and your determination to prevent similar horrific events from ever happening again. We cannot change history. I do not hold responsible the younger generation. I appreciate their willingness to ask forgiveness for the part of history that they have to live with. But, like I say, we cannot change the past. We can only make the present better for a better future. It's not enough just to learn about the Holocaust or history in general. We must learn from history so as to prevent some of these atrocities from happening again. Yes. Unfortunately, massacres and genocides are happening again and again. What is wrong with some people that they cannot learn to live with mutual respect and understanding, regardless of their background, their appearance, or the way they worship God? Well, I think you already know a little bit of my story. And I have to tell you that for many years, when people asked me, before the war, after the war, Anna, are you a Holocaust survivor? I would say, no, I was not in a Nazi concentration camp. But then my good friend Elie Wiesel, many of you may have read his books, convinced me that despite of not being in a Nazi concentration camp, I am considered a Holocaust survivor. So you know a little bit of my story from this wonderful introduction by my friend Martin, and I'll just give you a little bit more detail. So, I was born in Radom, Poland. If anyone has been in Poland, it's a city just a little bit south of Warsaw, the capital of Poland. I was 11 years old, and when I got up in the morning, one beautiful morning, I was so excited. I finished 6th grade, and I was to start 7th grade. I couldn't wait to see my old friends that I missed seeing during the summer vacation. But instead of going to school, there was a lot of commotion. There was a lot of screaming. People were being injured. People were being killed. And our building was hit by a bomb, and there was actually a fire on the roof of the 3-story building where we lived on the ground floor. So instead of going to school, my mom said that I and my brother, who was 5 years older, should hide in the cellar because it was September 1, 1939, and the beginning of the Second World War. So we hid in the cellar and just hoped and prayed that somehow we are going to survive. And when things kind of quieted down a little bit, we would go back to our apartment, only to run back to the cellar maybe an hour later, because these air raids repeated themselves every single day, maybe 6, 7, 8 times every single day. I should mention that my father was, my parents were kind of middle income. My father was a tailor, and a lot of his clientele was actually Polish Christian neighbors and other people. My mom just took care of the family. And I was growing up with a Polish nanny who often took me to a Catholic church, which was just across the main city square. I think I was almost as often in a Catholic church as I was in the synagogue, because my father used to say, I'm just as close to God in my own living room as I am in the synagogue. So I was growing up with the teaching of my parents that we are all God's children. It doesn't matter how you worship God, how you dress, how you talk, what's your background, and so on and so forth. Anyway, as the German armies were advancing very rapidly through Polish territory, and we were spending days in the cellar and nights back in our apartment, we expected the German armies to catch up with us any day because they were advancing very rapidly. But on about the third or fourth day of the war, my uncle, who was a country doctor, came with 2 horses and a buggy covered with straw and says, "There's no time to pack anything. We are leaving." We are leaving. Where are we going? Well, danger comes from the west. We go in the opposite direction. We're going east. We had no relatives in Eastern Poland. We did not know anyone in Eastern Poland, but that was the natural reaction. And of course, no time to pack. We just got dressed and piled up on the wagon. There were 8 people, my aunt and uncle, their son, my brother's age, and the 4 of us, my own family. And the problem was that the Polish roads were not like expressways here around Kingwood or Houston. They were usually Polish country mud roads, or maybe just rough cobblestone roads. So the advance was very, very slow because there were thousands of people, both Jewish and Christian, that were trying to save themselves from being taken over by the Germans. And if that was not bad enough, so, we were advancing very, very slowly. But the worst thing of all was, as we and thousands of other people were trying to save themselves, the German airplanes, the Messerschmitts, would lower themselves much lower than this ceiling and machine gun the people that were trying to run away. And many times there was no place where to hide. There were no shrubs, there were no trees. If we crawled under the wagon, sometimes the horses were spurred, so that was not very safe either. Anyway, they killed one of our horses, and they injured my father and his left arm, but my uncle, being a physician, always traveling with his doctor's bag, was able to save his arm. And again, I wish I had kept the diary, but I didn't. I think we were on the road. I know it was days and nights, maybe 2 days and 2 nights. And this one poor horse could no longer pull the wagon with the 8 people. We had no time to stop and give water and food to the horse. So we finally stopped in a place which is now in the Ukraine called Rovna. It's actually on the map. And we knocked on different doors. And people were saying, well, we have a large family, we cannot accommodate you. Until we found one kind of deserted little house, and we kind of moved in. We figured, well, if these people come back, we'll just beg them to allow us to stay with them. But they never came back. They either fled further east, or they just maybe were killed already during the war. And again, we had not much choice but to just kind of exist. And we expected the German armies again to catch up with us any moment. But instead, one beautiful morning, my father says, I hear Russian spoken. What in the world are the Russians doing here? Well, as you may know, Stalin and Hitler made an agreement to divide Poland. And had we stopped about 16 or 18 miles earlier, I would not be standing here talking with you today. Being Jewish, I probably would have had pretty much a common fate with 6 million other Jewish people. As it turned out, we were then resettled by the Russian authorities, again, a few days later, and we lived on a collective farm for about a year, and then in Stalingrad, until the German armies invaded the Soviet Union, and were fighting under the city of Stalingrad. So again, by the Russian authorities, we were told, please come to the railroad station with just whatever you can carry, and we are resettling you. Where are we going? East. Nobody ever told us where we're going. The word east will ring in my ears as long as I live. There was always east. By cattle trains, now they are moving us thousands of miles. Many times the train would stop at a railroad station. We were told to get off the train, and we literally lived on the railroad station maybe for 2-3 days, sleeping on the ground, just waiting for new orders. And sometimes it was the same train, maybe they were just checking some safety, whatever, or it was a different transport, but always cattle trains. And finally, we end up in Alma-Ata. It used to be the capital of Kazakhstan, of the Kazakh Republic. It's no longer capital, now it is Astana. Well, when we were on a collective farm, after finishing 6th grade, I was helping the teacher in a one-room school that accommodated kindergarten to the 4th grade. But it was okay, because I needed to learn the Russian language. So by the time we got to Stalingrad, I was already able to catch up with my own age group. And by the time I got to Alma-Ata, I spoke Russian fluently. Nobody believed I was not born in the Soviet Union. So life kind of settled into a routine. What I should mention is that when we left Stalingrad, my brother was drafted to the Russian army. Life in the Soviet Union was very tough. We were chronically hungry. It was difficult to concentrate on my studies, always thinking, where can I get a little bit of food? In 1946, we were allowed to go back to Europe, back to Poland. We did, only to find out that our extended family was all gone. They were all murdered in the Nazi concentration camps. So we felt very fortunate, having survived. And from that point on, we did not want to live in Poland. So illegally, we crossed the Czechoslovakian border, Austrian border. We ended up in the American-occupied zone of Germany. My parents lived there for 3.5 years in a camp for displaced persons, while I and my boyfriend, whom I eventually married, we went to Frankfurt am Main to continue our medical studies. And in 1949, I was able to immigrate with my parents to the United States. We also learned that my brother also survived the war, was involved in liberating Warsaw, actually. And once I got to this blessed country of ours, life was good. I continued my education. I married my boyfriend, who I met in Alma-Ata. We had 2 daughters, and life was good. So it is really wonderful for me to share my story with you, and I wish you all the best, and thank you again for listening to my story.
Visit www.marchofremembrancehouston.org, www.marchofremembrance.org for information on an event in your area. Here, Holocaust survivors, World War II veterans, and/or their families share their experiences as victims and liberators. Experience heartfelt testimonies, healing, and hope. Rise up and march against today's anti-Semitism. Marchofremembrance.org, marchofremembrancehouston.org.